57. The basis for citizenship. In various passages, the law gives us God's requirements for citizenship, notably in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 1 to 3. He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. The term congregation of the Lord applies both to Israel as a nation and Israel as a church. The requirements of membership in both covenant nation and quote-unquote church were the same: faith and obedience to the covenant law. Non-citizens could be believers, but only after the required conditions were met could they become members with governmental powers in the congregation. Eunuchs were barred. A whole man and a free man alone could be a member. Because the family is the basic unit in God's plan, anything departing from the legitimate family is barred. The biblical standard is the monogamous family, but the Bible regards polygamy as still family-oriented and hence tolerable in a way that adultery and bastardy are not. The line of David was a notable one, from Judah to Jesse, but because of the bastard ancestor, Judah's son by Tamar, only with David, the 10th generation, was covenant membership and office possible. Perverse or morally low peoples had to have 3 generations of faith and obedience, as with the Edomites, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 7 and 8, or 10 with the Ammonites and Moabites, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3, in order to enter into covenant membership and power. This fact of covenant citizenship is one of the most far-reaching facts of history, in that it involved a radical break with all other ideas of citizenship. The city-states and the nation-state of antiquity had a religious character, in that the political order was the basic religious unit. This religion, however, was not a personal faith in essence, but a social arrangement, a political alliance between a god and a political order. Very often, the political community was also an ethnic community. Rome was a notable exception here. The focal point of the religion was not worship, but political order. There was no contact with the god apart from the political order. David's ancestors, however, were men of faith as far as can be determined. In Israel, citizenship was not racial nor political, but covenantal. The basic unit, thus, was not the political order, but covenant man. The requirement of covenant citizenship was faithfulness, that is, faith in the God of the covenant and an obedience to his covenant law. To violate the law meant separation or excommunication from the covenant in all its aspects. This fact was retained by Christendom. Excommunication meant the loss of civil and ecclesiastical status, both for the medieval church and for most Protestant churches later on. The loss of citizenship in the United States on conviction of criminal charges is a survival of this fact. Ironically, while criminal offences still mean a loss of civil citizenship, the antinomian churches do not regard it as requiring a loss of church membership or citizenship. Christianity very early had to deal with the question of citizenship. The question was best resolved in the Western Church with the emphasis on the creedal formula: I believe. In the Eastern churches, the creed sometimes began with, "We believe." The emphasis is not on the personal faith of covenant man, but on the profession of the community. The individual can thus repeat a creed he does not believe, but affirm thereby his part in the community and his assent to the community. The Western tradition stresses covenant man, the believing person. The consequence has been a greater vitality in the Western churches. In the Middle Ages, citizenship was determined by participation in the Mass. The city was thus an association of individuals who participated in the Mass. Non-participants were thus non-citizens, such as the Jews. This fact meant a radical break with the group-oriented societies of paganism and stresses the individual and his centrality. The sociologist Max Weber pointed out two important consequences of this new view of citizenship. First, the individual was now legally disentangled from racial, clan, and kinship groups, and made more individual while at the same time given a greater, more personal, and intense communality. Second, this gave to the individual an autonomy which aided in the development of capitalism and modern secular rationality. This is not surprising. Without the link of the covenant between God and man, the person becomes an atom. Atomistic individualism then breaks down and people began to demand the reign of the group, pagan fashion. Socialism and fascism in the 20th century witnessed to modern man's inability to face up to individualism apart from God and his covenant. The medieval view, however, was defective. The Church mediated the citizenship via the Mass, not covenant faithfulness, but the Mass, not faith and obedience to God's covenant law, but participation in a church sacrament became the ground of citizenship. Earlier, biblical law was basic to communion, but gradually church rules began to accumulate and to dominate. The key to citizenship came to be relationship and obedience to the church. Biblical law includes obedience to church, state, family, etc., but its focal point is covenant obedience to God. Protestantism adopted the medieval view, although the Puritans in America moved towards reinstating the centrality of biblical law. As a result, Orthodox Jews very early were able to vote in America because of their adherence to common law. Meanwhile, however, another trend was in evidence in the Western world, one which began with a biblical orientation and soon departed from it. Biblical faith has a strong orientation to the land and to property. Two of the commandments, "Thou shalt not steal" and "Thou shalt not covet," are directly concerned with property. Another refers to the land as a blessing. "Honour thy father and thy mother, that it may go well with thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee," while still another refers to work. 6 days thou shalt labour, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 13 to 22. The covenant blessing clearly includes prosperity and property. Not surprisingly, very early, property became an aspect of the qualification for citizenship. This has deep roots in the biblical view of land. It was, however, converted into an aristocratic doctrine and an economic concept, so that citizenship meant a landed aristocracy rather than a covenant people. The results were ugly in that the Christian community was subverted and a large element of the population depressed. The collapse of Cromwell's regime meant also repression for the common people. One of the results was the development of a savage law code, which had roots in the Renaissance era and earlier, and the ready execution of individuals for minor offences against property. In America, these views were very early established in Virginia, again with savage overtones, such as the death penalty for killing a chicken or stealing an ear of corn. The democratic movement led to a moderation in legal penalties, but its influence on equality has meant that the criminal and the citizen have tended to be equalized. Many advocate the abandonment of laws requiring a loss of citizenship on criminal conviction. As a result, savage penalties are increasingly in evidence for law-abiding citizens as lawlessness begins to dominate the scene. The biblical basis seems to many hard-hearted. The idea of penalizing bastards is especially cited these days as an instance of unfair legislation. Such penalties are, however, designed to protect the integrity of the family, its property, inheritance, and legitimacy. Where these penalties are taken seriously, less bastardy will occur, and society will be more stable. To establish any kind of order, someone must be penalized, because order cannot exist unless disorder is outlawed. To legalize disorder means, in the end, to penalize order.